How's it going, fellas?
Hey, Mike.
Oh, I'm in the wrong live, I think.
You are.
Yeah,
This is a live for people who actually work. You're a firefighter. You should be sleeping. We'll see you later, man.
Well, you actually are interrupting my nap. I'm
Hi.
actually dedicated to be here to support you.
Well, you know,
well,
that's all I do for you and Dion. I just interrupt naps. So,
How
this thing's,
you,
go ahead.
how you been, man?
Oh, dude, I'll tell you what. I am wiped out, dude. Promoting to sergeant, putting me back on night shift. I work 7P to 5A. It's brutal. I didn't think it was going to be that bad because I worked night shift for years, but I did it when I was 25, not 34. And even just that little difference now that I have a kid too, it's, I used to be able to just sleep in. I got to be up to spend time with my son. It sucks. It sucks big time. So that's what's been killing me a lot. I see. Okay, let's see. I think I recognize everybody except for Thomas Pierce and Val Fears. I don't recognize these two, and I don't know how many more people we're gonna get. Zuber's hosting this through his school program. Is that how all you guys joined up? Okay, nice.
Yes.
Cool, sweet. Well, I've got the participants thing up and running, so if I see anybody new pop on, I should be able to get them in here without too much issue. Well, awesome. Well, shoot, guys, let me introduce myself for those of you who don't know me, which appears to just be two guys. I am Millennial Mike on Instagram, YouTube, good friend with Michael Zuber, very good friends with Zuber, with Dion, with the Lumberjack, with Frank, old guy REI, and with the financial firefighter, and with Mikey. Friends with all these guys. I met them all in person. They're all fantastic. In fact, both Frank, Mikey and Mark are all long distance investors just like me. So this is a super great room to be in for the two guys whose names I don't recognize. If you have questions, guys, please jump in. You follow me on IG. I appreciate that, Val. Yeah, if we've chatted before, sometimes people's names on Zoom versus Instagram or YouTube is different. So I apologize if I just forgot who you were. But pretty much everybody in this room is an experienced long distance real estate investor. So I think Zuber wanted me to do. Oh, we got somebody jumping in. Hold on, we had him. Troy Roberts, it's the name I recognize. So what I think Zuber wanted me to do was just talk a little bit about out-of-state investing, and then maybe even throw in the YouTube side, which I am proud to say that my advice on starting YouTube channels has helped, because old guy REI and Marco Shiro both started their own YouTube channels and are way more active than I am. Way more active than I am. And it's good because there's a lot of networking that can be done and a lot of opportunities that can come your way if you have an internet presence online for yourself, who you are, where you invest, and what you invest in. So yeah, so I'll go over a little intro for myself, just for the couple people who don't know me very well. Been investing in real estate since 2018. Bought my first house hack, the one that I'm in right now. From there, I decided it was very expensive to invest in the Seattle area, and saving up 20% for a down payment on another property was going to be a lot of money, like several $100,000 worth of money. So I started looking at Midwest markets that had cheaper rental properties where the numbers looked like they might make a little more sense. And after looking at a few of these other markets and conferring with other investors in those markets and making friends with other investors in those markets, I finally decided to go ahead and just take the plunge, jump off a cliff, leap of faith, and buy my first long distance rental property in the city of Gary, Indiana, which I am affectionately known as the King of Gary. Gary, Indiana, a very controversial city to invest in if you do much Googling on it. It has 3 times the national crime rate, 3 times the national poverty rate, 13,000 abandoned buildings. It's got a declining population. Pretty much all of the metrics that a place like BiggerPockets would tell you to look at when assessing a new market, Gary fails at. Yet I've managed to build a successful rental portfolio there in just the 4+ years I've been investing. Today, I have 27 rental units, 24 of which are in Gary, Indiana. I have like $7,500 or $7,500 of income a month coming in on top of what I do for my regular job, which is as a police officer. I work as a police officer full time. And I did a live stream a little bit earlier today, kind of just talking about the realities of working full time and trying to become a successful investor. one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of people talk about their journey of becoming a successful real estate investor, but they talk about it after they completed the journey. The awesome thing about this group of people right here with Frank and Mark and Mikey is that you've got a bunch of people who will be successful real estate investors 5 years from now, retired from their regular jobs, financially free because of real estate. But you get to jump in and check in with these guys on the journey. So a lot of you guys follow Zuber, and Zuber started his YouTube channel shortly after he retired from his day job. He already had 180 rental units. He was just about to release his #1 selling book on Amazon. But I sometimes ask myself the question, how much cooler would it have been, or how cool would it be now if I could go back and watch a video from Zuber from 2009 or 2005? You know, what was it like when he had 1 property or 3 properties, or going through the Great Recession, or transitioning from single family houses to buying small multifamilies? What would it have been like to be able to watch that process in real time, and then now just be able to go back and watch the videos about what he was thinking? So the cool thing about all the guys in here that you're seeing right now, and you should be following these guys, and you should be documenting your own journey, is one day, 5, 10 years from now, you'll be able to point people to your videos from today. This is what it was like when I bought my first rental property. I have that video. And what it was like when I bought my second, third, fourth, fifth, every single property I've purchased, I've been able to make a video for and then point people to that property. Mike, how do you run the numbers? Here's exactly how I ran the numbers on this property. Here's the video. Well, Mike, what do you think about HELOC? Dude, here's a video on exactly how I used a HELOC to buy a property, remodel it, cash out, pay the HELOC down. And here's how I did it 4 different times. So I think it's extremely powerful to not only document the journey, but also the benefits to the presence that you have if you make videos around where you invest. One of the big mistakes I think a lot of new YouTubers make is that they think, I want to make videos about real estate investing. And so they start trying to make some videos about how to invest in real estate. But guess what? When you type in how to invest in real estate, there's 5 million videos, like quite literally 5 million videos. How do you possibly stand out? You probably won't. And so what I always tell people to do is a little social experiment. If you go on YouTube and you type in real estate investing, even though I have almost 10,000 subscribers and I've got millions and millions of views, even someone like me, you type in real estate investing on YouTube, you could scroll through 100 pages of search results, never find a video from me. There's just too much competition. But if you type in real estate investing, Gary, Indiana, the first 100 results are all me. I own the search algorithm for Gary, Indiana, for Northwest Indiana, for long distance real estate investing. I have a bunch of videos that pop up if you type that in. So my encouragement to you, anybody watching this, is not only should you get started investing in real estate, we're going to talk about long distance, but document the whole process even before you bought your first property. My first videos are before I bought my first property. Document the whole process and make your channel city, county, state specific. I invest in Grand Forks, North Dakota. So I want to see your how to house hack in Grand Forks, North Dakota. The best lender in Grand Forks, North Dakota. The best property managers in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Just make a video about every topic for your area, and you will own that area. There's no competition for individual areas. All the competition is just big topics like how to use a HELOC. Great, there's 25,000 videos on it. Wonderful. So anyways, enough about that. Again, follow these guys who are right now, who've got their screens turned on. You absolutely should follow them. We'll have some time for questions if people want to go over questions. Real quick, I actually think this would be great to have it be a little interactive, and I'm pretty sure Zuber's going to put this either in the school or on his channel because he asked me to record it. So Frank, why don't you tell us how you got started investing at a distance?
Yeah, I was, well, we're in California on the Central Coast, and I found Bigger Pockets, and through Bigger Pockets, I ran across someone talking about turnkey rentals, and the idea was appealing to us because, well, the basic concept was right. You buy something already rehabbed, and even though you're paying retail, I thought you would have a lot less to worry about as far as maintenance and repairs and things like that. And so, funny enough, we ended up in a few different markets because we were following turnkey deals. So the first 3 properties we bought were turnkeys, one in Missouri, one in Indiana, in Gary. We followed your journey through there and went with the Olson Group on one. And then we have a small 2-1 in Illinois. And all of that worked out really well for us. I think now that we've purchased those, we've been looking for deals on the MLS and maybe some things that need a little bit of lipstick. Nothing like a heavy BRRRR or anything like that yet. I think that's probably the next step if we can get a couple more doors under our belt. Right now we have 5 properties and 8 doors. Yeah, and like you said, we were thinking the same thing, that it seemed like people needed the most help getting started, right? So we, with your help and Zuber's help and Dion, decided to try the YouTube thing and document all our mistakes, all our lessons. And we were hoping that it wouldn't turn people away, but let them see that we're persevering through those things. You know, now this summer is our 3rd year since we bought our first property. And, you know, we can see the benefits.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting, you know, Dion, Lumberjack, Zuber, they talk about the first 5 years. And I'm at 5.5 years right now. And the benefits, it is an exponential curve. You slowly start to see these benefits, a little bit of money, buy properties a little bit faster. But then at year 5, it really just starts to explode. Literally about 11 units this year, 3 or 4 different properties in like a 2-3 month period. And then I could have bought a bunch more. Oh, I got a couple more people jumping in. Hold on. Okay. There we go. We got everybody. I think everybody's joined in now. All right. So the first 5 years are the hardest. It's slow. It's a slog. You don't really feel the benefits of investing in real estate immediately. A couple $100 a month in cash flow doesn't do much for your bottom line. But 2-3 years in, where Frank's at, and I think actually Mark's around 3 or 4 years as well. We'll ask him in just a second. You start to feel it a little bit more, and at 5 years, I'm telling you, it really just kicks off. It's amazing. It's amazing what it'll do for you. Let me ask a couple other questions of Frank, and then I'm going to ask some questions of Mark so we can get their thoughts. So Frank, you have 5 properties, 8 units. That's what you said, right?
Yes.
And when did you buy your very first one?
We closed on a triplex in April of 2021.
Okay, so it's been a little over 3 years. You're now at 8 units. Fantastic. Congratulations. You're doing a great job. What was the hardest thing about investing at a distance? Was it picking a market? Was it finding trusted people? What was the most difficult thing you had to overcome to start investing at a distance?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if it was, well, again, through BRRRR, we found the turnkey promoter, and we built a relationship with her, and we really trusted her a lot. She went through the first year, actually in 2020, we were under contract for a few turnkeys that didn't work out for one reason or another. She was always there with us. She actually flies out, checks out the turnkey providers and their operations, and then if she likes what they're doing, she'll come back and let us know what she finds, and then we were, you know, making offers through them. So I feel like we started with trusted boots on the ground, for lack of a better term, but we just had a discussion about that because a lot of people say, you know, if you have family or friends in the market that you're looking into, whether it's long distance or whatever, that's the best place to start. But we didn't have any of that. We didn't have family or friends anywhere. And I think we were lucky to find her. And then after that, we purchased off the MLS in St. Louis. And when we found that agent, she was a member of BRRRR Pro. And she was also a member of another community that we're involved in, Addicted to ROI. And the woman that runs Addicted to ROI was very strict on who she worked with. So if any of the agents in the markets that she was in weren't performing or clients had bad experiences with, they were out right away. So with that, the agent being in both of those groups, we felt that we could trust her as well. And she's an investor there in St. Louis also. So she understood, what we wanted to do. And again, me being older, going for cash flow, those markets were perfect for that.
Yeah. And that is one of the most attractive things about investing at a distance. A lot of people like you, Frank, in California, or Mark in Hawaii, or myself in Seattle. I just listed off some of the most expensive real estate markets in the country. Anytime you see a list of least affordable places, I posted on my Instagram story today. You should follow me if you're not. Instagram story today, and it said it was a list of counties with the median home price is over 700,000, and it shows a map of the United States. And there's like 7 counties, and they're in Seattle, Hawaii, California, bright red. Everywhere else is under 700K. So there's a lot of people who live in these ridiculously expensive counties or cities or states, and they say, I want to invest where the numbers make sense. And then they discover the Midwest, but they don't know how to get started at a distance. Let's ask Mark a couple questions for those of you who don't know. Mark, will you please give us just a little intro, a little backstory on your portfolio, on how you got started investing at a distance?
I am the ultimate first responder in the fire department, but see, I'm working. Mike is off today, but yes, but I'm in Hawaii, like you mentioned. I invest in Pittsburgh, about 6,000 miles away. Same thing, you kind of look around, and I think it just came out today. Like Hawaii is the median single family home for last month was 1.12 was the median single family home, and
Ouch.
a condo is 530,000. So it's kind of hard entry point to get into, and especially like Airbnb regulations now, and it's very hard to make things cash flow. Some people were kind of getting it done with Airbnb short-term rentals, but with that now being kind of being phased out, it's very difficult. So like we all kind of talk about, you can live where you want, but invest where the numbers make sense. And I think Mike kind of touched on maybe what the biggest challenge is kind of just not getting caught up with you kind of talk about it, everything seems cheap from where you're living, right? Again, Hawaii, we look at Pittsburgh and it's just like, oh, these houses are all affordable. And, it kind of sometimes might cover up some of the mistakes you might make just because, it seems cheap, but at the same time, like Zuber talks about, right? You can go broke buying cheap. And I think that'll be my biggest thing is, do your due diligence, and kind of just because it's cheap doesn't mean, it's okay to make mistakes, I guess, in a sense. And I think that's some of the things I probably jumped into quickly, as far as it just seemed too good to be true. It just seemed like, oh, these homes are, a tenth the price, and everything's gonna go well from there. So that'll be my thing.
Yeah. And so what do you think, Mark, was your biggest struggle when it came to investing at a distance? What was the hardest hurdle to overcome?
I think for me personally, and I don't think a lot of people are going to have that much of a struggle. I think more people are in the mindset where they over analyze things. I probably under analyze things. So I think that would be my mistake. Most people are going to be putting more obstacles in their way to prevent them from getting started. For myself, it was more just, I'm going to figure it out. And I don't think everyone can do it that way. You really have to understand yourself, and kind of what your strengths are. And for me, that's just kind of one of my strengths. I always talk about it. I kind of just let things flow, and I'll figure it out. And I have a long-term vision in this. So I know that mistakes are going to happen. So I think that's the one thing you just got to get over, is realizing that you are going to make mistakes, and problems are going to happen. And it's just not giving up, and kind of just seeing the bigger picture and the end result. I think that's what's going to help you out along the way.
I think it's actually a good point you bring up. And I was talking about it on my live a little bit earlier today, the mental toughness aspect of real estate investing, because so many things can go wrong. You can miss things on an inspection. Properties can break down. Tenants cannot pay. You could have to deal with evictions. I had a friend who experienced wire fraud on their first rental property they bought, and all these different things that can go wrong. And a lot of the times I drift away from conversations about mental toughness or about just having the right attitude because I feel like they kind of come off as a little scammy. So many fake gurus just talk about getting your mindset right. That's how you become a millionaire. Well, you do have to have the right mindset, but now give me some real plan to follow that I can also pursue. But Mark, and then I'll go back to Frank. Why don't you guys tell us, how did you, because this is for a lot of people what they struggle with. They don't have either, call it the mental discipline or the mental fortitude, or they get too much anxiety about the idea of investing, and certainly investing at a distance. So how did you either build up to that mental toughness or overcome the hurdle to say, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy at a distance. Where did that like mental grit come from, Mark? Let's do you first.
Well, just being, I think, in the firehouse, I think that's the biggest thing. But I think it's really just talking to other investors and being around other people. And I mean, you see how successful you are, and Zuber and Dion and Lumberjack, and they all talk about mistakes too, right? So it's not a flawless process where anyone has done it and they haven't made mistakes. And I think that's the biggest thing. You be around all these people that are years ahead of you and they're successful, but they always are talking about things and struggles they had and challenges they faced. And I think that's what's great about this community. Everyone is just trying to help everyone and share their stories. And I think it's just taking little bits and pieces of everyone's journey and putting it into your situation, because, like Zuber always talks about too, right? It's, he didn't want to fly. So, he found someplace somewhat in a driving distance, and maybe he's taking smaller returns, but that allowed him to invest and make some money. But at the same time, it fit into his personality where he didn't want to fly or travel. And I think that's what a lot of people get caught up in. They see the great returns in certain markets, and that's where they're going to invest. Whereas they might be a person that needs to be more hands-on or micromanage things, and they need to invest someplace close to them, even if they're getting smaller returns. And I think that's the one thing, is people just get caught up so much in the numbers and the possible returns that they can get, but they don't realize, like, if they can't sleep at night, I mean, this is not going to be a sustainable journey, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Frank, what about you? What was that mental hurdle that you and your wife had to overcome, and how did you do it?
Well, I think our story. I had tried to get started in real estate back in '07 without any education. We lost those properties, went through bankruptcy and all that stuff in 2010. And then again in 2019, realizing that I hadn't saved anything for retirement, I was looking for a way to do that. And, we tried retirement accounts and things like that, but we weren't going to be able to fill those up fast enough to have a retirement. And again, I found BRRRR, found a lot of good people on there that reignited my interest in real estate. And I think in a way I'm fortunate, because I've always said you need to have a really strong why to get you through the things that are going to come up with real estate. And my why is, if something happened to me, my family would have been in a pretty rough spot without my income. So I can't fail at this. So that's, that's our why, my why. But then, besides that, having a good amount of reserves will help you through the tough times as well, because things are going to come up. And, if you don't have any reserves, even a small thing is going to knock you out of the race. But we were fortunate enough to have some good reserves, and things did come up, and it was hard putting all that money out in the beginning because we hadn't had time to accumulate, for maintenance and CapEx and vacancy and things like that. So now that those things have been repaired over the next few years or whatever, we'll be able to rebuild those reserves for each property. But I think that was the biggest thing, having a strong reason to do this. You can't just think, I want to be rich and go for it, because that's not going to work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do think that is something that really a lot of the gurus, the people who give advice online, they kind of paint the picture of rich, successful, retire early, which can be true, absolutely. But if your why is just, man, I really want a nice car, that may not be enough of a reason to get you through the difficult times that are guaranteed to happen and that you're going to go through. And so some people might quit, and people do quit all the time, all the time. And I don't want to see that happen to you. So I'm going to go ahead and hit a couple points here rapid fire on how to get started investing at a distance. So I'm just going to, I got a little document I'm going to pull up real quick and just read off this real fast. So some of the main things that I cover in my course that is yet to be released, even though it's been asked of me many times and it's nearly done. I just literally had to put my whole life on pause because I promoted from police officer to sergeant supervisor, and I got the luxury of being promoted to night shift. And now I work 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. and it's ruined my whole schedule, and I'm just exhausted all the time. So anyways, I know I need to stop making excuses and get back to it, but that's why the course hasn't come out. And that's why I've barely released any videos on YouTube lately. But some of the different things that I want to talk to people about when it comes to getting started investing at a distance in order to make this work for you is how to pick a market. How I picked a market, as I mentioned earlier, was I decided it was too expensive to invest in Seattle. So I started looking at the Midwest, while at the same time I was networking with other people who make YouTube videos, other people who have YouTube channels. And I was introduced to somebody who invested in Indiana. And through having conversations with them, they were saying I should give it a shot. And I was very resistant to invest in Gary, Indiana, because of all the reasons I mentioned earlier, how destitute of a city it is. Think Detroit. And eventually what got me over the hump was the person who was talking to me about it was investing there. And they grew a portfolio from 0 to like 10 or 11 rentals. And a lot of the problems and concerns I had were ameliorated by my conversations with them, where they explained how they avoided the problems I was afraid of. And so by having those trusted boots on the ground, which is something that Frank also had, and something that Mark also had, and I don't know if he mentioned that in his little intro, but he had a friend who invested in Pittsburgh that he got a piggyback off of. It's kind of a common theme that works in all of our stories. We found people we trusted and relied on and said, all right, I'll give it a shot because they're doing it, and I'll go to them for advice if I need it. So when it comes to declaring a market, it isn't just about the spreadsheet and which market has the best cash flow. I would recommend that what you do is, sure, you can look at a bunch of markets that cash flow well in the Midwest, but then from there you want to see, how do I meet investors in those markets? And that comes to another topic I talk about all the time, which is virtual networking. Again, why I mentioned you should have a YouTube channel. But also, if you want to invest in, let's say, Tulsa, Oklahoma, the first thing I would do would be to go onto YouTube and type in Tulsa, Oklahoma real estate investing and start watching videos from all the people who invest there that make videos. And then reaching out to those content creators, both on YouTube and on Instagram, because they probably have an Instagram page, and just asking to talk. Big YouTubers like Dion or like Michael Zuber, or certainly like everybody at Bigger Pockets, where you've got 20,000, 50,000, million subscribers, you're never going to get any attention from those kinds of guys. They just don't have the time. Too many millions of people reach out to them. You're going to get lost in the noise. But somebody like Mark Oshiro, who invests in Pennsylvania with, I think, around 1,000 subscribers, and Frank with a few hundred subscribers, just started his channel. Somebody like me, even me with 10,000 subscribers, when somebody leaves a comment on my channel or messages me on Instagram, I see it and then I respond to it. And I've been a little less good about responding lately, but I'm finally starting to hit a point where I just get so many messages. It's getting a little more difficult, but I still usually make it to all of them. The reason you want to reach out to these local experienced investors in whatever market you're considering is because who better to give you info on that market than the guy who's been doing it for 6 years, or Mark or Frank who's been doing it for 3 years. You find these people who don't need to sell you anything. They don't have a dog in the fight. You just ask them a question and I can tell you the ins and outs of Gary, Indiana, and it's free of charge. So absolutely, best way to declare a market is to, yes, look at good cash flowing markets, but then start trying to do some virtual networking. And when you find that person that you have good conversations with, that you trust, who you also can tell is successful because A, they've got units, and B, those units are actually cash flowing positively, well, then just go copy and paste what they're doing into your own life. No need to reinvent the wheel. Plagiarize. School was wrong. They didn't teach you the right stuff. From there, again, so when I talk about building a team at a distance, I put your other investors, trusted boots on the ground at the top of the team, most important person. Underneath them, you're going to have your contractors and handymans and your property managers and your real estate agents. For me, the next most important person is going to be the property manager. They're going to be the interface between your property and the tenant. They're going to field all of the phone calls, problems, issues, things that break, evictions. They're also going to be the ones who are more experienced for what rents are in the market and for what some of the industry standards. Gary, Indiana, it's not common for a landlord to provide any appliances, nothing, like no fridge, no washer dryer, nothing. Tenants provide it all. That's certainly not how it is here in Seattle. In Seattle, when I lease my duplex, they get everything provided for them. And if it breaks, it's on me to fix it. In Indiana, not the case at all. So some of those little local intricate differences, your property manager is going to know more about than you do at a distance, unless maybe you lived there previously. So for me, the most important, second most important person on my out-of-state investing team is going to be my property manager. And they're going to be the person that I talk to most, with the exception of my contractors if I'm doing a remodel. If I'm doing remodels, I talk to them all the time. But so for me, it goes other investors, property managers, and then it would be contractors and handymen. Real estate agents, God bless them, they're a dime a dozen. You can find new ones. You can always find good ones. You can also always find bad ones. Very easy to find bad ones, but you can also always find good ones. Contractors and handyman are much more difficult. Who's going to do a good job? Who's going to do a good job the first time? Who's going to do it right? Who's going to show up when you need them to? Who completes the work on time, gets the bid right or close to right? Who comes back and fixes a problem when something didn't work after they've already fixed it? Finding that person is tough. But this is why it's so important to start with other investors in a market, because once you found that other investor like Frank or like Mark Oshiro, when it comes time to say, well, who's a good handyman? Who do you think you should ask? Your trusted local boots on the ground, who's your fellow investor out there. You go, hey, man, who do you use as a roofer, as a plumber, as an electrician? Who cuts the grass for your properties? Who does the snow removal? Well, they probably have the answers, and they can just text you a phone number and boom, you're in business. Super easy and much more effective than going to Google and just typing in, or even the apps like Thumbtack, good painter. You might find a good one or you might not. So save yourself that issue. From there, real estate agents. Now, the number one way that I would recommend finding real estate agents, finding a good one, again, after going to your network and saying, who do you use? That's the best way to find it. But from there, to force yourself to network, when I go on something like realtor.com or Zillow and I'm looking at houses and I'm looking at a market and I'm looking and scrolling, anytime I see a house or property that I'm interested in, I scroll down to who the listing agent is and I call them directly. That forces me to talk to multiple new listing agents, because most of the time different properties I'm looking at aren't listed by the same agent. So now I have to do an introduction. I let them know my buy box, who I am, what I buy, where I buy. And then I get to have that face-to-face, well, not quite face-to-face, voice-to-voice conversation with somebody. And you will very quickly be able to determine who is about it, who is a good agent, who cares, who knows what they're talking about, who understands seller financing, who got into real estate because they just wanted to help families find a pretty house, and who understands what seller financing is and carry back documents from the seller or any of the different things that can be done. Who understands subject to mortgages or assumable mortgages, who can recommend you a good property manager. You very quickly figure out which real estate agents are worth their salt and which ones are probably just going to wash out with an extra session. So I recommend calling and talking with a whole bunch of different ones. Let me make sure I don't have anybody waiting. Oh, good. I would have felt that. Awesome. Okay. And then like the last thing on your team is probably wholesalers in terms of what's the most important to go with. Other experts in your market, trusted boots on the ground, property managers, contractors, handyman, real estate agents, and at the bottom is wholesalers. Wholesalers have their place, but they come and go really quick and they're not super reliable. However, I recommend that you do network with them and take their phone calls. When you're talking with a wholesaler makes their money by being somewhat they have a somewhat shady business model. Their goal is to find an uneducated seller who doesn't know the value of what they have, or a desperate seller who's in a very difficult situation. Then what they do is they offer them pennies on the dollar, but speed. And so where they advocate for themselves is they can go get full price somewhere else. I'm selling them speed, not money, or not the sales purchase price. And so they offer pennies on the dollar for the value of an asset. And a lot of people sell. And some people sell because they really do need that speed. And I think, sadly, some people sell because they just don't know the value of what they have. And I'm not a huge fan of that, but it is what it is. However, what I would recommend, because guess what wholesalers get told all the time? They get told no. They get told to pound sand. They get told, stop trying to rip me off. They get told, give me a good offer. And then they give an offer 50 cents on the dollar and they get laughed at. So what I recommend you do with your wholesalers is, if this wholesaler doesn't know what seller financing is, you should educate them on seller financing. If you don't know what seller financing is, I'm not going to explain it here, but you need to educate yourself on seller financing. It's the holy grail of real estate investing, and it solves a lot of the problems that we have right now where interest rates are really high and it sucks. So my recommendation is talk to your wholesalers about seller financing, because when they offer 50 cents on the dollar and they get told no, they could offer 100 cents on the dollar and just offer a fair price, but offer that fair price with terms and conditions. And those terms and conditions be, if they own the property outright, which many times they do, hey, I've got a buyer who'll buy your property. He just wants to do it on payments. Can we talk about what payments you might be willing to accept? Now the wholesaler has an extra tool on their belt to approach this problem and still get paid, instead of just get told no and have wasted the lead. So it's a good thing to do to educate your wholesalers to make sure. And I've bought 2 or 3 seller finance deals where I talked to the wholesaler and educated them and got them to open up the conversation. And I went in and closed it, and we made the deal work. And I did 0 down, 0% interest, just principal payments only. Fantastic deals. Full documentation on that's on my channel. So that's the team. That's building your team for long distance markets. Real quick, I want to make sure that we have a chance to answer any questions. I do see a few messages coming in, so let me go ahead and make sure, guys. Zoom has updated since the last time I used it, so let me make sure I'm reading through these. Financial Firefighter says, "What's up?" John Morris says, yet to be released. Yeah, I know, Matt. My bad, John. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. Should a long distance investor keep a larger reserve than they would if they were investing locally? Yeah, I don't really think it matters if you're at a distance versus locally versus how much you keep in reserves. For instance, my market in Indiana, everything's way cheaper than it is here in Seattle. I think it's really going to be more dependent on what market you're investing in. So, in order for me, and this is going to sound crazy to people, I can do an entire roof for a house for $10,000. Entire roof, start to finish. Here in Seattle, $25,000, $35,000. Gary, Indiana, $10,000, start to finish, done in a week, easy. And so do I need as large of reserves to handle problems out there? No, I don't. I keep about $50,000 in cash plus a bunch of lines of credit. And I've never, ever had to dip into the lines of credit ever. I've never even come close to bottoming out my cash reserves, never even come close to it. I spend way more when it comes to just taking on a project that I know is going to be a project and doing a remodel than I ever have in an unplanned repair. The single largest unexpected repair I've ever had was $11,500. I bought a house where the foundation started collapsing in on one side, like a wall in the basement started coming in, and I had to send a team out there to reinforce it with a bunch of steel beams, and it cost like $11,000 for them to go into the basement, take up all the concrete, put these beams in, reinforce it, make sure it drained properly. Again, something out here that would have cost me a fortune, but out there, $11,500. My second largest unplanned expense was a plumbing issue where the main pipe that went from the house to the sewer on the sidewalk had tree branches growing through it. I had to replace the whole thing. That cost me $4,500. Those are my 2 largest. Other than that, everything else has been like $1,000 or less for random things here or there. So I don't need a huge amount in reserves. But again, maybe you invest in a market that's way more expensive than Indiana. There's still affordable markets that are double, triple Indiana. So I would say you need to figure out what your worst expensive one-time cost could be. Like, oh my God, a tornado blew a roof off and that roof is 15 grand. I would say double it, so that depending on the size of your portfolio, if you have like less than 5 rentals, then just do 1. But if you have more than 5 rentals, I would say double your most catastrophic one-time expense. If it's 15 grand for a property and you have 30 grand in a bank account, you should easily be able to weather, no pun intended, multiple smaller problems, or one big one plus a couple small. And if you legitimately have 2 majors that happen at the same time, then you're still covered. You would have to have even more than that before you finally start dipping into credit. That's my recommendation, at least. Okay. For the course, were you thinking course and boot camp style? Looking forward to the education. Yeah. So my course, it is going to be something like that. My course is like 75% done. I have most of the videos recorded and saved on a site. And a lot of it is, I tried to do something a little bit different than what Zuber and what the Lumberjack have done. First of all, I love those guys, and Dion. I love those guys. They're amazing. I look up to them. I wish I could spend more time with 2 out of the 3, but I get a lot of FaceTime with Dion because we live so close. I tried to record my course with different background settings in different scenarios, some actual live walkthroughs, just make it a little bit, and not to knock on these guys, but a little less boring. So many courses are just sitting behind a desk talking. And so that took more time. And then, yes, the boot camp. Absolutely, I'm going to have a boot camp where we meet as an accountability group once a week for a certain amount of time, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever it might be. I might call it your FTO process because, again, as a cop, I'm going to be your field training officer and you're going to be a bunch of rookie cops. So I'm going to steal some of those monikers and jazz it up a little bit. But yeah, we'll absolutely have something like that. I think it's a great disservice to just give a course but not give any real guidance going alongside with it, in my opinion. Okay. Do you have a plan of transitioning out of Gary? That's a great question, Mark, if you're still here or if you're pretending to lift weights because, you know, whatever. He was in a weight room, whatever. Love him. To transition out of Gary. So I don't think that I will ever sell everything in Gary and just pick. I'm done with the city of Gary. I have become romanticized by the city. I, again, jokingly call myself the king of Gary. I can't turn my back on the city that raised me. And I do have this opinion of cities like Gary, Indiana, that are on the Rust Belt. I mean, if you think of the historic problems that this part of the country suffered with deindustrialization, with the introduction of the North American Free Trade Agreement in the 1970s, when we started shipping steel jobs and manufacturing jobs away from the country to the point where, you know, U.S. Steel founded the city of Gary in 1906. And at one point had 95,000 employees there and a population of 200K. U.S. Steel was at about 5,000 employees. They just got sold this year or within the last few months. And who knows what the future looks like. But I look at all of the manufacturing potential and then the very, very low tax burden that a state like Indiana places on companies. And then I look at the geographical location of the city of Gary, where it's on one of the Great Lakes, 45 minutes from Chicago. There's so much opportunity there. And I really do think that when I survey the political landscape, what appears to me, and I'm no political expert, but what appears to be happening to me is that there seems to be a continued bifurcation of the parties. More and more people leave California, New York, and Seattle to go to Florida and Texas. And it just seems to be that the sides are picking sides and moving to live with their people who agree with them. And I think companies will continue to get destroyed, unfortunately, by Democratic policies. I think about what happened to Amazon here in Seattle. So Amazon has about 90,000 employees in the city of Seattle. And the city of Seattle decided what they were going to do was create a new tax on companies that were over, I can't remember, like over 500 employees. They were going to create a head tax. Every employee you have in the city, you have to pay $500 per employee. Well, Amazon was like, we got 90,000 people at $500 a year. It's millions and millions and millions of dollars in taxes. Why would we stay? And so they began immediately looking for other places to open up additional headquarters. Buildings they were actively in the middle of building, they said, pause it, stop it, we're not doing it. And they just started looking for other places to move their headquarters. A lot of people remember the story where Amazon was looking at moving a headquarter building at this time to New York. And it was major headline news because that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was like, we don't want them here, you know, and then they didn't go to New York. So I look at the business climate, and I know people don't like to talk politics, but if you aren't willing to face the facts, which is that the blue states freaking hate landlords and they freaking hate businesses, and they're doing everything they can to make sure that people can never get evicted and that you as the property owner have to bite the bullet at every time you go to court. If you won't pay attention to that, real estate investing probably not for you. That's another major thing that's a benefit to investing in the Midwest is it takes me 3 weeks to evict somebody. My taxes are super, super low. I have a what I call landlord fair state. There are tenants advocacy states, and I don't need a landlord advocacy state. I just want a landlord fair state. If I break the contract, hold me accountable. If they break the contract, hold them accountable. So I look at a place like Indiana to answer the primary question of, do I want to transition out of Gary? And I just see way too much opportunity. I see states that are trying their hardest to drive business away. And when Amazon was looking at moving, they said, well, we could just leave the city of Seattle and go across the bridge to the city of Bellevue, that's 20 minutes away, and save millions of dollars in taxes. Well, what's right next to Gary? Chicago. What's one of the only cities that has probably worse laws than Chicago? And do people get forced out of Chicago? Yes. And forced out of Illinois? Yes. And where do they end up? Who are a lot of the people that I'm taking as tenants? And why are some of our prices for rentals going through the roof compared to where they were 4 years ago? Rich Chicago people are saying, I don't want to live here. I may as well go here and save a bunch of money. And the competition for rentals in Indiana has gone up because of it. So I don't think I'll ever move out of Gary completely. I will invest other places, but I won't ever leave Gary. That was a very long answer, but interesting question. Troy says, John, reserves should be built based on CapEx demand and vacancy turnover costs, so you can weather the storm no matter what it is, out of state or local market. Yeah, I agree. You want to be able to weather either storm. Thomas Pierce says, off topic, was the Wednesday accountability meeting recorded? I didn't see the recording in school. That's a question probably for Zuber. I don't know about that one, fellas. I would ask him next time you see him. I actually have not logged onto the school website yet. He gave me access to it, and I had just been so busy. I haven't even checked it out yet, so I'm sorry about that.
Hey, Mike, that was the meeting that I'm hosting on Wednesdays, every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific.
Oh, okay, awesome.
And we're looking at all the video because the meeting went for almost 4 hours, and they usually do. So we didn't know if we should just plaster 4 hours on the site or not. So we're going to try to pick and choose, because there were a lot of great topics brought up that night. And sometimes we get off topic, and just goof around, but we probably don't want that stuff on Zuber's site. So we're hoping to release a few videos from that meeting.
Sure. Well, great. Well, yeah. So then whoever asked that question was Troy, maybe, or no, it was the NYC guy. Or Thomas Pierce, NYC. Probably just keep checking in with Frank about the status of that, because it sounds like he'll be more squared away. He had another question, or Troy Roberts, KC investor, says, where and how did you build those cash reserves? Good question. So when I bought my first property, I put everything I had to get into it. When I finally wired the money, what I had left was like $3,000, nothing. But I was very comfortable at living with nothing. Why? Because I've been poor my entire life. And leading up to buying my first rental property, I had recently just got divorced, which was a financial smack in the face, sucked, paying child support. But the only benefit from it was, as all men experience when it comes to divorce, you don't get your kids. You're lucky if you get to see them every other week. So I had nothing but free time that I had previously spent with my son. And so I just decided to work every single day that I didn't have my son, which was almost every day of the week. So I just worked nonstop, and I worked copious amounts of overtime. I saved up every penny that I had. And when I bought the property, I just kept working those same levels of overtime to save up and buy my next property. But the really nice thing was for me, and this is why everybody should start with house hacking if you can. Previously, I'd been spending $2,000 a month in rent every month to rent a place in the Seattle area. When I bought my first rental property, this house hack, I was able to take my cost of living from $2,000 a month and drop it to $300 a month, because I did have a mortgage payment, but I had a tenant paying almost all of the mortgage payment, and I had a roommate paying me another few $100s. 6 years of owning this rental property, my mortgage payment is $2,400 a month, and it rents for $3,700 a month on one side. One side went from $1,600 a month to $3,700 a month in just a 6-year period. And so now I make money every month from just one side renting it out. So when you say, well, where did you save up all those reserves? It's very easy to save reserves quickly. If you were previously allocating $2,000 a month, and now you only got to allocate $200, $300, $400, $500 a month, well, what do you do with the surplus $1,500 you used to have? You stick it in a bank for your next rental property, or as a cash reserve for your next problem. On top of continuing to work overtime, Maybe you're married with kids and you need to back it off. If so, fine. But if you're a single guy or you have time, work the overtime, because why not? At the end of the day, when you go home and you watch a bunch of TV, you play some video games, do you really feel productive? Like, I'm not saying don't ever relax or enjoy your time, but like when I was a kid, I used to play World of Warcraft. And one of the features of the games is you can check in on the game, how many hours you've played, and it will log it forever. And I remember after playing the game for a year or so, I checked in and it was like I'd wasted like 34 days. Not I just happened to play for 34 different days. Like it logs how many hours. And then when it gets up to 24 hours, it says you've played 1 day. I played 34 days of my life in a year. Now I was a 16-year-old or something, so I didn't have anything better to do. But I know adults who have a year or 2 years logged on one game, like years of your life, you just sat and did nothing. What if you had worked? Well, I mean, working, that's not fun. You're right, it's not fun, but it's the money you get that you can then deploy into something that will improve your life. And you know what? You could just decide to go back and play games, but at least you can do it saying you know you were successful. So Dion does. So yeah, that's where I got the cash reserves. I worked really hard, worked a bunch of overtime, kept working the overtime, worked 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And I've maintained that pace pretty much ever since then. And now I don't work like 80 hours a week for my regular job. I still do about 55. But if you add into it all of the real estate stuff that I do and all of the YouTube stuff that I do, I'm still easily at 80 hours a week in terms of time that I spend outputting towards what I would call work. Certainly from a tax purpose, I can claim that stuff as work. All right. Get through a few more of these questions. On the roof example you gave, if it's $15K for a roof replacement from storm damage, at what point do you rely on insurance to cover part of it? Yeah. Tell everyone that Florida is closed. I like it, man. That's my dream, to be down there one day. As somebody who grew up in North Dakota, which is ice cold, and then I moved to Washington, which does have some of the most beautiful views in the whole country, Pacific Northwest, but it's still cold. I went to a beach. I was like, oh, this is gorgeous. You step in the water. You're like, no, thanks, man. Then I visited Miami for the first time and I was like, this is where I want to live. But to your question, I would only go to insurance if it was probably like $20,000 or more, truthfully, because the problem that we're experiencing, and you know best of all down in Florida, you can't even get insurance. If you get insurance, it's like a miracle. And so truly, for me, when it comes to my properties, insurance is catastrophic only. Fire, flood, earthquake, like any other problem, it will be cheaper if I just pay out of pocket, because otherwise I will lose all my insurance opportunities. It's when I put in my last couple of requests for new insurance vendors, they just straight up come back and told me, oh, your roof's 12 years old. Sorry, it's too old. It's a 12-year-old roof. Roofing technology from 2012 is way better than roofing technology from 1990 or 1950. Like a 12-year-old roof is not a problem. Oh, we don't like your electrical. We don't like this, that. They just deny. So another thing they ask for is, have you ever claimed, made an insurance claim? One of the things they'll ask for is, has anyone else ever made an insurance claim on this house? I'm like, I don't know. How am I supposed? The house been around for 100 years, probably. Like, well, like I have no idea. So for me, I will not go to my insurance company for anything other than some catastrophic loss. Even that major foundation problem I talked about, $11,000 out of my own pocket. If it had been 20, I still would have paid it. I would have been pissed, but I would have paid it. It would really have to get to like 25, 30, 40 before I'm really going to go. Is it worth it to go to an insurance company? How many problems will that create for me down the line? How much higher will all of my insurance rates be? How negatively will that affect my cash flow? Yeah, there's a break-even point in there somewhere, but it's certainly not $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. And everybody, Florida is closed except for me. Why haven't you done another duplex house hack? It's a great question. Dion asks me this one all the time. So truthfully, and I've talked about this, I think only one time. Single father, I now have full custody of my son. I'm very proud that I get to say that I'm in the very, very small percentage of men who do actually get full custody of their kid. We haven't seen his mom in like 6 years. As soon as she realized she wasn't going to get child support or custody, she bounced. Bye. So there's that. I grew up moving school to school. I mean, I went to so many different schools. I grew up very poor, tough life. My son does have a tough life because he's a kid who doesn't have his mom. you know, and that's hard on any kid. I enjoy knowing that he's had the same house that his entire life he can remember. I got this house when he was like 1.5, something like that. He has been able to be in the same house, in the same neighborhood, with the same people, go to the same school and the same park his entire life. Stability is good for kids. Doesn't have a mom. Could I house hack and move somewhere else? Yes. Would I have to move him? Yes. And I just don't want to do that to him if I can avoid it. And if it was I need to make the sacrifice for the benefit of my family because it's the only way I can reach financial freedom, then I would say, all right, buddy, we're just going to have to suck it up. But it's not. I have the opportunity to just buy rental properties in Indiana. So it's like, could I get another one here? Sure. Would it possibly be more beneficial? Maybe. That you can argue back and forth versus like, well, I get more equity appreciation. Yeah, sure. But I would just like to keep my son here personally. Now, we both want to move to Florida. And because he wants to move to Florida, and we'll do one move when we move to Florida, I'll make that jump at some point. But until then, I like trying to do that for my son. Something I can deliver on for him. All right, thanks, Mike. Got to run in on vacation with the family. Troy, good to talk with you, man. If you already bounced out of here, it looks like you did. Okay, so you utilize a high deductible. How much, if you don't mind sharing? Oh, I go for the max deduction every time. Max deduction. So depending on who is giving you your home loan, they may have a requirement that you can't go over a certain deduction amount. So it's very common for your lender, whoever's giving you the mortgage, to say, we won't allow our clients to have a deductible over $2,500 or over $5,000. And I assume that they work those numbers into what their like debt to income ratio process, like they're paying attention to what they think you can afford. And they won't let you go over the deductible above it because they don't want you to not be able to pay that deductible and therefore essentially be uninsured because you can't get the work done. And so they'll have requirements. For any of the houses that I own cash or I have private money on, I take the deductible as high. I've had some even let me do $20,000. Most are about $10,000. They'll be like, we'll have a $10,000 deductible. And what that does is it lowers my monthly payment and allows me to cash flow. And I know I'm not coming to them unless the problem's $20,000 anyways. If I could take it to $20,000, I'd take it to $20,000 and save myself on a monthly basis and cash flow the property better. So that's for me. Some people prefer peace of mind. And you may have an area where the insurance, you know, like in Florida, where it's so hard to get insurance, you may have differences in your local market that are different than mine. But I go up to the maximum deduction, and that's where I chill. Try to make it through these questions. Oh, maybe I got to the bottom. I think I did. Yep, I did. Okay, awesome. Okay, hey fellas, we've been going for about an hour. If there's any questions that anybody has, feel free to jump in. Other than that, I'll probably close it out. If anybody wants to say anything, jump in, raise their hand, ask a question in person. I'll give you guys a minute here to think of something, and I will talk about what I want to talk about. I'll talk about private money. A lot of people, a lot of gurus online will talk to you about how to buy real estate with other people's money, OPM. And they'll sell this as this amazing concept or amazing idea. Like, yeah, you can get into real estate with none of your own money and you can be very successful and you don't have to come out of pocket with anything. And so if you're poor or broke, you've made bad financial choices, well, just buy real estate with other people's money. And then they'll cover their bases by saying, well, technically a loan is other people's money. A loan from a regular lender like a bank is other. They're right. But they kind of mislead you, the audience, in what private money should actually be. I've used private money many times. I got to write up a contract today for $50,000 on a private money loan I'm going to take for a BRRRR strategy that I'm doing. Private money is fantastic. It's way better than hard money. And it's certainly got advantages over 30-year fixed rate debt, but 30-year fixed rate debt usually is the gold standard when it comes to long-term debt. But when it comes to private money, my advice is this. Number one, you got to earn the right to use it. Just like you got to earn the right to talk about real estate online, in my opinion, if you're to give advice about it, at least documenting it is different than giving advice. If you're going to successfully get private money lenders to come to you and say they're willing to write you a check for $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, you want to be able to demonstrate to them that you're worth investing in, because they're not they're not just investing in real estate or lending money. They're actually also investing in you as a human being and as a person. And you represent the touch point for their investment. And they're going to check on it. And they're going to want to know how you're doing. And so being able to, again, it's another great reason to document your experiences and your journey on YouTube. Being able to say, yeah, I've bought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different properties, and I'm collecting rents on all of these ones. I've been managing it for all this time, or I've got a great relationship with my property manager. And here's how I've addressed these problems or those problems. Being able to answer those questions for people will help make them feel more comfortable when it comes to lending money with you and investing with you. When you get to the point where you have enough of your own success, you did it yourself enough, that you can finally start going to other people and saying, hey, do you want to invest with me? It's very good to just be able to have that catalog of evidence to show them that you're doing a good job. And if you don't have that bank of evidence that you can pull examples from and say, here's what I've done that's worked, then you're probably not in a position to borrow someone else's money yet. A lot of people are tempted to, raid grandma's savings accounts, get your family to invest with you. They're tempted because they don't want to do the work to work the overtime themselves and make the sacrifices themselves. And they want to do it here and now. They want to do it quicker, faster, and more than last time. And I would say resist the urge, build your own pedigree of success that speaks for itself. Because what ends up happening is eventually you get so good, and especially if you're making YouTube videos, you became so recognized in your own market, other people will start coming to you and want to lend money to you, to the point where I don't actually have enough projects to borrow all the money people want to lend to me. I routinely have to tell people, I'm going to put you on my list. The next time I need some, I'll call you back, but I just don't have enough. So private money is very important to learn. It's important to understand when you should start doing it. And it's very important to understand that the number one rule is your reputation is the most important thing that you have. You're taking care of someone else's money, and hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and real estate investing has no fury like an investor scorned. Their money is your number one priority. So if it comes to, oh, I did a bad deal, you're going to take it in the shorts and pay them back, because if you don't do that, you will ruin your reputation. And in the online era, you can't run from it anymore. Previously, you could have maybe moved cities. Now you cannot run from it. Always take care of other people's money. Frank, go ahead. You got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I've been thinking about that private money situation. So we've had a family member offer to lend us money in the past, but I was wondering, so the properties like we're buying in St. Louis, we're getting into them for, between 25 and 30,000. So if you were to borrow from, say, the family member and offer them 10% on their money, when I run through the deal, we could pay their 10% per month with half of the cash flow. Mm-hmm. And if you set that up for, say, 5 years, I'm having trouble figuring out the exit part. Like,
so are you looking to take private money on a deal that you're also getting a loan from the bank on?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's where the problem is, because it's going to be very hard to make the numbers work when you also have a bank loan, because how do you do the exit strategy? It's tough to refinance it when you already have a bank loan in place. The way that I do my private money, my slow burst strategy, which John just brought up, I'll talk about that briefly. I'm only taking private money on properties that I'm paying all cash for. And I might use the private money as the all cash purchase. So for instance, what I did is have a HELOC, $100,000. I draw from the HELOC, buy the house in cash, then take the private money loan to pay the HELOC back off. And now I have this private money loan attached to this house, filed with the county as an official lien on the property. It's a private mortgage, a note that I have with the individual. They could go sell that note. I got to pay someone else. And if I don't make good on the payment, they can foreclose on the property, just like a regular mortgage. It's a private mortgage that creates a note that can be sold. But what helps me is I don't have a bank involved in it either. First of all, a bank probably wouldn't even let you do that unless you tried to do it after the fact and oh yeah, after you've closed on it, then borrow the money for your down payment money to have your down payment money back, and then you'd have to file something on the house. But a bank's probably going to throw a fit about that. So for me, what's worked as the exit plan is with my slow burst strategy. is that I put a 5-year term on there where I have to refinance at the 5-year mark, do the cash out refi on the BRRRR. But I put an extension clause in there that I can extend up to 3 years if it doesn't appraise for the right amount of money. So that if I get caught in the middle of an economic downturn, I don't get forced into refinancing in 2009. I would have been able to wait all the way till 2012, which things were getting better. And so, but ultimately what works for me is that I own the property outright. And so I think it's going to be difficult for you to do that if you're using a bank. My advice would be probably you want to start looking at some type of seller financing or very, very, very cheap BRRRR strategy products. And I know, Frank, you had not said that you were doing any major BRRRR strategies yet. And I think I've talked to you about this before. In my opinion, you're at the point where it's time to expand your skills. You've got 3 years on, 8 units. It's now time to go ahead and say, all right, I know how to do the basics. It's time to start learning some trick shots and just start working on the trick shots a little bit. And definitely private money and the BRRRR strategy are both trick shots. And you might mess it up. You might, the values may not come out right. But at some point you have to transition from just doing the safe and slow and steady turnkey. You can keep doing that forever. You can, it's just gonna be a slower process. Or you can say, I'm ready to try to up my game and try something more complex. I understand there's more risk. I could screw it up, but I'm not going to learn how to do it unless I do it at some point. Did that answer your question, man? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it was really helpful. And I understand why I was having trouble, because I was thinking about buying basically using the other person's money for the down payment, right, and having a loan. So that helps a lot. And then, yeah, we have spoken before about diving into some BRRRR projects. So we'll be
the only other exit strategy that would work would be to sell. And again, there's really not any point in selling unless you force equity in some way.
Right.
First of all, I'm kind of against selling at any point because I just have heard so many real estate agents or so many real estate investors say, man, I wish I hadn't sold. It's worth double now. No matter what it is they sold and when they sold, at some point they go, man, I wish I hadn't sold. It's worth double now. You know, borrow money on the equity, don't sell the property. But that would be the only exit strategy. And again, unless you forced equity, if you buy something and hold it for 3 years, it might go up a little bit. We did have an anomaly during COVID where everything went up a bunch, but that was an anomaly. So banking on appreciation, you got to look at least like 15 years to hope for some appreciation. That would be worth selling. Let me get to John's question. He says, how many slow BRRRRs did you do with your own money before you felt comfortable using private money? Thanks for taking the time. So actually, I did no slow BRRRRs with my own money. I did 3 BRRRR strategies with my own money. And then I said, how do I do the BRRRR strategy with someone else's money? And that's when I created the slow BRRRR strategy. You can't do a slow BRRRR strategy with your own money because the thing that makes it slow is that I have a private mortgage note with an individual that is set with a 5-year term that can go all the way to 8 years. That's what makes it slow. Your normal BRRRR strategy, you're looking to cash out refi at either 6 months or 12 months. Paid with cash, you can do it in 6 months. If you've got a loan, you have to do it in 12 months. But the downside is you may have short-term debt or bridge debt with an official lender or something like that. But with the BRRRR strategy, seeing as you're looking at that 6 to 12 month time frame, that's actually a pretty quick turnaround, especially in real estate. Time just seems to pass really quick. And the downside is that you don't know if you did your remodel and the after repair value came in low. Well, what do? I need to cash out refi and get my money back and either pay my lenders off or I need to be able to cash flow. I got too much of my equity wrapped up in this thing. I don't want to do the BRRRR strategy right now, but I'm kind of forced to. With my private money that I borrow, I'm intending on just paying them interest only. And interest only is cheaper than principal and interest. And so my monthly payment is low relative to what fixed rate debt would be. So I get the cash flow for those 5 to 8 years. And at any point, because I also have no prepayment penalty, at any point between day 1 and 8 years, that it's a good time for me to do a cash out refi, I can do it immediately. If 2.5 years in, values have gone up or interest rates drop to 3% again, I can just pull the trigger, cash out refi right there on the spot. If at 5 years, it's not a great time, I can wait till year 7. And if at year 8, it's still not a great time, and that's the point where I would get forced into it. but it's very hard for me to see a scenario where I wasn't able to force enough equity and then add 8 more years of appreciation to at least hit my break-even number. I would have to be so off on estimating all my numbers that it would be just embarrassing, like hang up your cape type stuff. So I find it very hard to see that happen. And I've never been off like that on anything. Not going to say it's impossible. You just get that appraiser who just hates you for whatever reason, but very, very unlikely. So, and I've now done the slow burst strategy 4 times. Yeah, I'm on my 4th time right now. So yeah, and sadly I've not made videos about the 3 most recent. So I know I need to get on that. I'm sorry, guys. Any other questions from anybody else? No? Frank, it was good to see you. John, Jan, and Val, and Mikey, and Thomas Pierce, everybody who was in here. I really appreciate everybody coming today for supporting Zuber. As always, it was a huge honor anytime I get to be here and do anything for him. If you don't follow him, which I'm sure everybody here does, you should. Follow him on Instagram, follow him on YouTube. Lumberjack and Dion, same things. All they care about is making sure you guys are successful. Together, we are going to take over Bigger Pockets, one mini YouTuber at a time, and we're going to buy real estate, one rental at a time. So guys, until next time, catch you later.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.